So August is over, and as far as I'm concerned, that means the end of summer. We are now in fall, spooky season, which I'm so happy about. But let's go ahead and pause and talk about all of my new watches over the past month in August 2024. These are all of the movies that I watched for the first time or checked out on a physical media release for the first time. I'm going to rank them for you from my least favorite to my favorite. This is a tradition I do here every single month. By the way, welcome to the Cobwebs channel, everyone. My name is Daniel. I've got 20 movies to talk to you about today, and these are almost all horror movies. I've also got a few fall movies in here as well to prepare for my last video, which was a video on fall movies. But my number 20, the bottom of my list, is the only movie that's different. It's the total outlier. And it's also the only movie I'm going to get super negative on. Everything else I'm at least somewhat positive. And that is Deadpool and Wolverine. So I went to see this in the theaters with my wife. We went on a date night because we've typically enjoyed going to see Marvel movies throughout our relationship. And she's a big Ryan Reynolds fan. And I haven't seen a new Marvel movie or even a new superhero movie for a year since Guardians of the Galaxy 3 last summer. So, I wasn't feeling burned out. And I was like, yeah, let's go have fun with this. But I thought it was just terrible. There's a name for the genre that this movie fits into. And I'm not hearing anybody else say it, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. This movie's a spoof. Like, it's really not like another Marvel movie. It's not even really another Deadpool movie. It's a spoof, and it's not the kind of spoof I like. It's the kind of spoof that's just constantly taking cheap shots at much better movies, making fun of Marvel movies and past X-Men movies from Fox that are all so much better than this, so it just feels kind of pathetic. The movie barely has a plot. It's mostly just Ryan Reynolds joking around with grumpy Hugh Jackman. I thought a few jokes were kind of funny, but for the most part, I didn't really find it to be funny. I thought the action sequences were incredibly boring because absolutely nothing in this movie feels like it matters. This movie is multiverse nonsense, and it's just a really dumb spoof, very badly made, looks terrible, just looks like green screen garbage. Like, I'm not even the biggest Deadpool fan in general of like Deadpool 1 and 2, but I mean, those two movies on a filmmaking level are like light years ahead of this movie. I mean, this movie looks awful. But let's go ahead and get more positive. Let's talk about my number 19. Let's start getting into some spooky stuff. My number 19 is Creature Feature from 2015. Interesting case with this movie. So I know the director of this. Well, I kind of know him through YouTube. This was directed by Chase Smith, who is the host of the AVA Pop Culture YouTube channel. He talks about a lot of old movies and physical media. And he's come up on my channel a few times recently. I really like him, love his channel. He seems like a great guy. And he sent me a few of his movies on physical media. So he sent this to me. So I'm just so appreciative. So I got to check it out. And, I had a pretty good time with it. This movie, it seemed to me, it has two very clear goals. Show really cool monsters and show a lot of nudity. Like, it seems like that's really what they're trying to do, and they very much succeed on both those things. I know from Chase himself that this was an incredibly low budget movie, and you can tell, not so much because of how it looks. I thought it looked pretty good, but it's more so the sound quality. Sometimes I had trouble understanding what people are saying, but for the most part, I think they did a really good job with their budget. Clearly, they put a lot of money and work into the practical effects, so there are so many monsters in this that are really cool. A clown monster, a werewolf, a scarecrow. The scarecrow is probably my favorite. I love a killer scarecrow because this is a horror anthology that takes place on Halloween. And one thing I will say, clearly he's going for that Halloween atmosphere, which I appreciate. It's not really my type of Halloween because this is very much like the go out partying and drinking kind of side of Halloween, and that's where the characters are operating as they kind of get picked off by all of these monsters. And, that's a very big part of Halloween, not to be discounted, but I'm kind of more of a nostalgic Halloween kind of a person, so that didn't immediately draw me in, but I do like that it takes place on Halloween, and clearly they did a lot with their budget, so respect to you, Chase. Thank you so much for sending this to me. I really appreciate it. My number 18 is The Curse of the Blue Lights from 1988. This is on a Vinegar Syndrome release that I picked up. Really, really cool looking release. And this movie, when it started out, I thought I was going to love it so much because it starts out in the country in the fall. It opens up with this farmer and a scarecrow comes to life and kills him. And I was like, yes, a killer scarecrow. This is so exciting. And the movie just had such a cozy, farmland, spooky feel to it. Clearly very low budget. It's also another low budget one. But I just really like the vibe of it. But when it gets to the monsters and like what the plot is actually going on, there are these like creatures that are trying to bring this god back to life. And clearly they did a lot with the makeup, and the makeup does look pretty good, but I just didn't like the monsters in this. Like, the makeup is good, but I don't like the designs. I find it kind of off-putting, and I do not like the performances from the actors inside of the makeup. It's just very goofy, and I don't know. I wasn't into it. So these two movies are very interesting counterpieces, because like I like the cozy vibe and the characters more in this one, but didn't like the monsters. But this one, you know, it's kind of got that hard rock partying atmosphere that I don't like quite so much, and didn't really care for the characters, but for the most of them at least. But the monsters are awesome. So it's like you put these two together and you kind of got the perfect experience for me. So definitely not as great as I wanted it to be, but it's got a few things that I did enjoy. At number 17, here's a theatrical release. This is Cuckoo, or some people are telling me it's pronounced cuckoo. I don't know. I also really don't think it matters. This is barely a word. This is a new release that just came out in theaters, and it's about a girl whose mother just passed away, so she's going to live with her biological father and his new family, and her father doesn't really seem to care about her very much, so it's kind of an awkward situation. But they're going to live on this beautiful nature resort in Germany because the father's going to be doing some work there. You know, she's just kind of this disgruntled teen, but she gets a part-time job there, and the place is run by Dan Stevens, and she just starts to figure out there's something creepy going on at this resort, and especially with Dan Stevens, and wouldn't you know it, she's right. I thought this movie was okay. It's very well made technically. It's very beautiful looking. The actors are very good. I especially definitely enjoy Dan Stevens in this. I'm a big fan of him ever since I saw him in The Guest back in 2014. But the movie's very much a mystery, and I went into it not knowing what it's about. And as the mysteries got revealed, the movie just kind of got less interesting for me and just kind of started falling apart. There's a really big thing with a lot of horror movies these days where they just will not let you know what the movies are about before you go in. The trailer won't tell you, synopsises will not tell you, and people make a big deal about going in blind. And then a lot of times when I go see these movies, I'm like, really? Like, I feel like you didn't say what the plot was in the trailer because it's just not a very good plot. And like, it wouldn't have been a good hook if you told people what this was going to be about. I feel like I experienced that a lot. And I definitely experienced that in this movie. I thought it was kind of an okay 3-star movie. And then when I was driving home with my buddy who I saw it with, we were just discussing it and it was just kind of falling apart. I don't feel like they thought this thing through very well, but it's a decent movie. I thought it was pretty good. At number 16, this is a movie people in the comment section on the channel have been telling me to watch for so long. This is The Fearless Vampire Killers. I believe it's from 1968. And this is a Roman Polanski directed film. It's basically supposed to be like a spoof of Hammer vampire movies. There are these two guys, an older researcher and his young assistant, and they come into this small village to stay at the hotel and try to figure out if there's a vampire living up in the castle. And, you know, I had really high hopes for this movie because if you look at pictures from it, it looks absolutely beautiful. And a lot of people were highly recommending it to me. And I thought it was okay. I saw a Letterboxd review of this movie that kind of spoke to me. And it said, it's like a Mel Brooks comedy played in slow motion. That's kind of true. Like, it's a spoof. I didn't ever find it funny. I don't think I can remember a single thing that I found funny at all in this movie. And it's very slow, and there's very little dialogue, and there's very little cool vampire stuff. There's a little bit here and there. And then also, I don't know, nobody really ever emerges as the hero. It almost feels like part of what makes it a spoof is that nothing in the movie really has any meaning, especially by the end. But if you want to say there's a main character, it's Roman Polanski himself plays the young assistant. And he cannot act. He just really can't. There's no screen presence. There's no charisma. There's just nothing to his performance whatsoever. But the interesting thing is this is where he met Sharon Tate. And they eventually got married. And then Sharon Tate met a horrific fate. And just a lot of horrific things happened around both of them. And it's just very interesting to see the movie where they ended up meeting as this goofy little vampire movie. But it does look absolutely beautiful, snowy atmosphere, not without merit for sure. There were things I liked, but I wanted to love it. At number 15 is The Thing That Couldn't Die from 1958. And I checked this out in this Scream Factory Universal Horror Collection. They put out a bunch of these. This is volume 6, and this is actually the last movie on this set. I hadn't yet seen, but there's the thing that couldn't die right there. And basically what the movie is it takes place on a ranch out in the country. When the people who live on this ranch are digging for water, they find this ancient chest. And one of them happens to be an archaeologist, and he gets a professor so that they can open up this chest or figure out its value and how old it is. But some thieves end up opening it up, and they find inside there a head, which you can see the severed head right there. And this is a fun movie. This is just a fun little 1950s black and white horror film, just a little bit over an hour long. It's got some fun characters in there. It's got some good atmosphere. It's definitely got some really fun spooky stuff around this disembodied head and a headless body that ends up emerging. It's a good time. I just enjoyed this little movie. But one downside grade I gotta say about it is the main guy. Now, I really like the main girl. There's kind of like these two young people at the center of this movie. The girl is very likable, and she's got these like witchy powers that are pretty cool in the movie. But the guy is played by, I don't know the actor's name, but he plays like the horrible son in several Douglas Sirk melodramas around this time. So he's so unlikable in those movies. He's more unlikable than he should be in this movie. But whatever, it's a fun little movie. At number 14, The Spider Labyrinth from 1988. Man, I have been looking forward to seeing this movie for a long time. So glad I finally did. The movie is about this professor who is tasked to go to Budapest to do some research. There's a doctor who's been doing some research, and things seem to be very mysterious around him. And he's just kind of trying to figure out what was going on with this doctor, with this research. Is there some kind of spooky cult going on? The plot is not super important. It's really the vibes in the movie and just the weird, crazy stuff that happens. I've been hearing about this movie for years and how it's like one of the craziest Italian horror films ever made, but it wasn't really available for a long time. But Severin put it out on 4K last year and then put it out on much more affordable Blu-ray this year, so I picked this up recently. Here's the thing. Is this movie crazy? Technically, there is some crazy stuff that happens. I mean, it's called Spider Labyrinth. Yeah, you get spiders, you get labyrinths, you get like this crazy looking woman who you see on the back here, and these bloody murders that feel very much like homages to Dario Argento, and weird like humanoid spider powers. Like crazy stuff happens here. A cult, like Lovecraftian stuff. But that's just not very much of the runtime. So I spent so much of the movie like, I thought this movie was going to have like some weird stuff. Like, what is this? What's going on? You finally get to some stuff, and then you get more boring stuff, and then you get to some more stuff, and it's just not very much of the runtime. So there is some really cool stuff in this movie for sure. This movie just wasn't as awesome as I felt like it was kind of built up for me. But it does look fantastic. It's a beautiful movie. It's got a great score and soundtrack. But my biggest problem with the movie is the lead actor. I don't remember his name. I looked him up. He's hardly been in anything else. He is the worst actor I have seen be a lead in a movie in a long time. He is a horrible actor. Like, he is so flat, monotone. Sometimes deliver these lines, and I think, how did the director not let him just try a second take? And I recognize, like, it's an Italian horror film. I don't need great acting. But if they could just get somebody who's, like, kind of decent, or, like, has some kind of screen presence. I don't know, this guy was so boring, and he hurt the movie for me. I just wish I could see this with somebody halfway decent. At number 13, taking a huge departure from Spider Labyrinth, this is The Odd Life of Timothy Green from 2012. So I checked this out because I heard it was a good fall movie, and it is. I quite enjoyed it. I put it on my list talking about some fall movie recommendations in my last video. What the movie is about is it stars Joel Edgerton and Jennifer Gardner, and they're two people who are trying to have a baby, and it's just not working. And as a game, they write down all of the aspects they'd like to have in a future kid. They put it all in a box, bury it in the backyard, kind of as a symbolic way of saying goodbye to that dream and goodbye to this part of their life. And but out of the ground from those notes grows a child that fits all these things. So it's very weird, but the movie is kind of them just learning like how to be parents and how to move forward with that part of the life. It's interesting. And it's a very just like heartwarming, sweet movie. I watched it with my wife. We had a good time, and the fall atmosphere is fantastic. At number 12 is a weird 1988 cult movie that I've been meaning to watch for a long time. This is Hell Comes to Frogtown. So this is on Blu-ray from Vinegar Syndrome. I don't have it, but a buddy of mine does. I was over at his house and we watched this. And this movie stars Roddy Piper in a post-apocalyptic future where pretty much all men are what's the male equivalent of barren? I don't know, but they can't impregnate any women. But Roddy Piper is like the last real man on Earth. But that's not the only thing a bit weird about this post-apocalyptic world. Also, there are humanoid frog people that I think were created by radiation. So there's humans and there's frogs, and some scientists have to transport Roddy Piper to this lab so that he can make sure the human race keeps going. I enjoyed this movie a lot. I think this is exactly what you want in just a weird 80s kind of sci-fi horror comedy cult movie kind of thing. I mean, this movie just kind of checks all the boxes. It's a total blast. Roddy Piper, while not giving quite as good a performance as he does in They Live, just because John Carpenter is such a good director, he gets that out of him. But he's very fun and charismatic. The movie's got some good laughs. It's kind of sexy in a campy way. It's got these really cool frog monsters. Honestly, the makeup was better than I expected. This movie's just a good time. At number 11, Bloodbath at the House of Death. So this is one of Vinegar Syndrome's latest releases, and I actually put out a review for this in the past month. This movie is, gosh, it's another spoof. I feel like there's a lot of spoof kind of things on this list. But it's about these paranormal researchers who come to this house where 18 people had been murdered, and come to find out if there's any kind of supernatural ghostly activity going on. And it's a spoof of horror movies, of like classic British horror, because this is a British horror film, but also movies like Carrie and Alien. There's just a lot of good jokes in here. I thought this movie was funny. Like, it got a lot of good laughs out of me. Vincent Price is in this movie, and he's very funny and just very campy. And there actually are some pretty good horror moments, some pretty cool kills. So this movie just kind of delivered for me. It was much better than I expected, and I had a great time with it. At number 10, Gretel and Hansel from 2020. So this is directed by Oz Perkins. So I actually saw this movie in theaters back in 2020. I think it was the last movie I saw in theaters for quite a long time. And I didn't really like it all that much because I thought it was very beautiful and everything, but it was just very slow. But rewatching it on Blu-ray at home, I don't know, it just played way better for me. I think part of that's because slow movies, I think, are better at home rather than in the theater, but also because I've just really grown my interest in the past year or so in witchy movies, in witch films and witchcraft, in horror films and such like that. And this movie's incredibly satisfying as a witch film. It's got so much cool stuff. I talked about this in my recent video on fall movies, so it's a fantastic fall movie. The atmosphere is great, and Alice Krige is a very, very good witch, so cool stuff here. Another autumn movie at number 9, Indian Summer from 1993. So this stars Alan Arkin as a camp director who's about to close down his camp, but he invites a bunch of past campers who are now adults to come spend a week there as just one last hurrah. And it's just a little slice of life movie with a fantastic cast about these people just kind of rediscovering themselves, going through these character arcs, becoming better people or changing in some way. And it's just a really good time, a really nice time. I love the cast here, particularly Bill Paxton. Really like Diane Lane in this and Elizabeth Perkins. Fantastic group of people. And it's even got Sam Raimi as an actor in it too, which is really, really cool. But it's just like a nice movie. I came to like these characters so much, really care about what was going on with them. I think my favorite was Bill Paxton movie. I just loved his character so much. This is just a very pleasant movie, but it was released by Touchstone, which is owned by Disney. So I don't know if we'll ever get this thing on Blu-ray. I would love to get it and watch it in actual HD, but I checked it out on the streaming service Canopy, which is free if you have a library card, and it was just great. At number 8, another movie theater watch, a brand new film. This is Strange Darling. So this movie is about a couple of people who meet, have a one-night stand, but it turns out there is a serial killer involved and things go bad. This is one of those movies where you should know as little as possible going in, and I think the movie actually earns that, and that does make it a better experience rather than just feeling like, oh, this is it. Interesting thing about it is a very simple story, but it's told in 6 chapters and they're told out of order. So the movie is just kind of this very interesting puzzle to put together. I thought the performances, particularly the main 2 performances, almost the only performances in the movie, although not quite, absolutely excellent. The movie was just so consistently interesting. It's something different, and I really like the soundtrack too. There's one song in the movie that I've heard in a lot of other movies, including other horror movies, but everything else was like very unfamiliar and created this very consistent weird vibe. I thought the soundtrack was really, really cool. At number 7, Death Walks at Midnight from 1972. Also last month, I put out a video on my top 10 giallo films, and this was one of the lists that I had just watched for the first time. I wanted to check something new out before I made that video, and I put it on the list. I really enjoyed it. It's about this young model who takes a job taking this experimental drug so they can figure out what happens, and she hallucinates, goes through this crazy trip, and witnesses somebody get murdered. When she comes out of it, she figures that was probably just a hallucination, doesn't take it too seriously. But over the course of the movie, starts to figure out, oh, this probably actually did happen. And she starts trying to solve what actually went on. And it's a really good movie. I really enjoyed this giallo. The lead actress I thought was fantastic. I love this lead character whose name is Valentina. She's just so much more of a just kind of take charge, interesting, assertive kind of a main character than we get in a lot of giallos. So she was just fun. She was really fun to watch and just watch her interact with all the other characters. Just a great protagonist. And an interesting twist on the genre, I thought, is we see the killer's face in the opening kill scene. So we know what he looks like. We just don't really know, like, who is he? What is he doing? What's his significance in this story? And unraveling that mystery was something different and something pretty darn cool. So really cool kill scenes in this movie as well. Really, really enjoyed this giallo. But at number 6, a movie, man, I've been meaning to check this out for so long. This is Needful Things from 1993. So this is a Stephen King adaptation. And what it's about is this small town of Castle Rock, Maine, Stephen King's favorite fictional town, and a new antique dealer moves into town. It starts up a new shop. He's played by Max von Sydow, and he becomes very popular in the town because he's always got whatever people are looking for. But when he gives it to them, he makes them promise to do a favor for him. And these favors are always these small acts of unkindness to their neighbors and such. And it just creates all these perfect domino effects to just make everyone hate each other and tear this town apart, because Max von Sydow is the devil. So this is a devil horror movie that takes place in a very atmospheric small town in the fall. And this is just a cozy vibe horror movie. Just really, really enjoyed it for the entire feel of it, but loved the performances. Max von Sydow, fantastic, an excellent devil. Very, very charming, but also scary when he needs to be. Ed Harris plays the local sheriff, who's our main character. He's really, really good here. A little bit of a different kind of performance from him. More passionate, I think. And I checked out the 2-hour theatrical cut that's on 4K, this Kino Lorber 4K release, but they did include the 3-hour TV cut. And I do want to watch that, actually, because this is the world I would just enjoy living in for longer. But also, it kind of did feel like, as the movie went on, things just had to move very, very fast to get where we need to go. And I would like to see those things just have more time to breathe. So I'm very interested in checking it out. Have you seen the television cut of this? Let me know down in the comments. I'm curious. But cracking into the top 5, we've got Hoosiers from 1980, 86. So this is a basketball movie. Kind of weird for me to watch a sports movie these days. I hardly ever watch sports movies. I'm not a big sports guy at all. But I heard this one had a really great fall atmosphere, and it totally does, so it made my fall video. But it's just this really great story. It's about Gene Hackman, who's this disgraced college basketball coach who moves to this tiny little small town to coach their high school basketball team. It's a huge step down for him. But this basketball team means everything to this town and the people there. So it's actually a very high pressure job because they care so much about this basketball team being successful and things being done the way they want it to be done. And it's a very satisfying story because Gene Hackman is a guy who, he's very take charge and he will do things the way he wants to do it. And it's very cool watching him just kind of clash with the people in the town and have to stand up for himself and his methods. And also he takes the town drunk, played by Dennis Hopper, under his wing and tries to build him back up too. And Dennis Hopper probably gives a standout performance in the movie. He's so good, although Gene Hackman's fantastic. This is just a great human story, and I did really love the atmosphere of it. But at number 4, A Blade in the Dark. So this has been one of my favorite giallos for a long time. I have actually seen it a couple of times before, but both times on Shudder. It seems like this is a movie that's always on Shudder. But when this Vinegar Syndrome 4K came out of it, because it wasn't really available on physical media in the States before, I bought it day one. That was like a couple of years ago. But I finally watched the 4K over the past month because I had a buddy over and he wanted to watch it, so we checked it out. Look at this. You kind of slip this out and then an extra slip cover. comes out here. So cool. So yeah, this is a giallo I'm a big fan of, and it's about this composer who's composing a horror movie who rents this house to kind of work out of and get this job done, but starts to figure out that there might be murders happening in the house under his very nose and has to try to solve those. So it's a pretty fun plot, and it's got grisly murder scenes, probably some of the most brutal kill scenes in any giallo. This is directed by Lamberto Bava, who's the son of Mario Bava, and I love Lamberto Bava. He's made a lot of cool movies like Demons, and Blast Fighter is an action movie that he made that's actually really cool. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Lamberto Bava. Also Delirium, that's a cool giallo that he made. Really enjoy this movie. But at number 3, a movie that, man, I don't know if I was expecting I was going to enjoy this movie as much as I did. Alien Romulus. Yeah, a brand new Alien movie came out over the last month, and I went to see it opening weekend, and man, I thought it was so good. And this is not my franchise. I'm not like a huge Alien fan. I mean, I love the original. It's a classic, but I'm not so big on the whole franchise as a whole. But this movie brought me in because this brought this franchise back to a horror place. And man, this is a horror film. It is violent. It is scary. It is gross. And this movie feels like going through a haunted house attraction in October. And there's just gross stuff and stuff jumping out at you. And it's this whole scary experience. Man, this movie gave me that, and I love that. I thought it was so much fun. Fede Alvarez is a favorite director of mine that's working right now, and I thought he knocked it out of the park with this. And I also like the characters and the main performances, particularly David Johnson, who plays the new android. Stole the movie for me. So good. At number 2, Oddity. So this is another new horror film, but I got to check it out on streaming because it didn't play in theaters anywhere near me, and it just hit streaming. And this is now the scariest movie of the year. It's not my favorite movie of the year, not quite, but it is the scariest film of the year. Holy cow, this movie is creepy. It's got jump scares that like chilled me to my bone. The movie is about this woman who is murdered under very creepy circumstances, which is like the opening scene of this movie. And her twin sister, who's this psychic medium, who's blind also, starts to try to figure out what really happened and who really killed her sister. So the movie is a murder mystery, a really good one, but also it's a ghost story. It's a supernatural, like witchy story too. And it's got this creepy wooden man who you're probably going to see in all of the promotional materials for this movie. But that image is so creepy. I thought Oddity was fantastic. But my favorite movie watching experience of the last month, this is going to seem so random. I checked this out just like a couple of days ago on Amazon Prime, a movie from 2010. This is Black Death. So this horror film takes place in the year of our Lord, 1348. Oh, wait, excuse me.
In the year of our Lord, 1348.
A medieval set film starring Eddie Redmayne. Yeah, if you look at any poster for this movie, it's going to look like Sean Bean stars in it, but really the star is Eddie Redmayne, who's this young priest who's fallen in love with a woman and is looking for a sign of whether he should leave the monastery to be with her or stay. And Sean Bean shows up as this witch hunting knight with his men and says, I need somebody to guide me to this remote village. And he takes the opportunity as a sign for him to leave the monastery and lead these guys to this village that is untouched by the Black Death, the plague. This takes place in the time when England has been ravaged by this plague, but there's this one village that wasn't, and Sean Bean strongly suspects that it's because of witchcraft and necromancy, and he's gonna go kill some witches. This movie is a bleak, miserable, very period accurate witch hunting movie that I think a lot of people aren't gonna like because of all those things, but I loved it. I thought it was excellent. I mean, the performances, this is probably my favorite Eddie Redmayne performance I've ever seen, but Sean Bean, he is like a medieval knight who time traveled to be in this movie. Like, he is so authentic, badass, but like tragic and just barbaric. Like, this movie, this is why I think this movie is a little bit too much for a lot of people, because I was looking at Letterboxd reviews, and a lot of people just don't get this movie. But this movie takes place in a time period when people are being converted to Christianity by the point of a knife. And this is about Christian knights who are going to force Christianity on a pagan village by any means necessary, probably just by killing them all. And I think people just want this movie to be more black and white, to have clear good guys and bad guys, but these Christian knights are sadistic inflictors of death and violence, as they were in history. And the pagans who they come to in this village this is not Avatar, okay? Like, there are some horrible things going on there too. Ultimately, I think one side encroached on the other side, and that makes a big difference. But this movie is just so honest in how that kind of situation would go and the things that each side would do to each other. And it's bleak, it is sad, but it is so well made and intense and violent. And I love the period recreation of it. Just a medieval set horror film is so awesome. And I loved this movie. This is a hidden gem from the 2010s. And this seems like a perfect Scream Factory release on 4K. So I would love to see that one day. But Black Death, awesome movie. I really recommend it. So that's my watch list, but what did you watch in August? Let me know down in the comments below. Let's chat about those movies. And hey, welcome to the spooky season. I'm so excited. Please hit the subscribe button and the like button if you did enjoy this. We got a lot more cool stuff coming. And for more fun, check out this video right over here or this playlist of all of my other watch list videos. Thank you so much. I will talk to you next time.